Okay, we do get a lot of contradictory information about Canada's population growth. We've been reading for months, weeks and months, that there's like 800,000 new people showed up or 800,000 new immigrants. And I doubted that, but I mean, I reported on it and it seemed odd because of a lot of telltale signs. But like as of this week, it looks like no, that's kind of, that's confusion. It's people converting from one status to another, converting in many cases into being permanent residents. But look, we got the news from Stats Canada just this week. It's nothing. Like Canada's population growth has slowed dramatically, really, really dramatically. Like in the last quarter, almost zero. Okay. In some provinces, zero. I got to admit, like it's small, but Saskatchewan, Manitoba, Atlantic Canada, you're adding some people. Good for you. So's Alberta. Now, a friend of mine who's going to be on the show next week, he's a great statistician, great analyst. He does terrific work. He does meticulous review of the stuff that really affects the housing market, interest rates, banking. Fantastic analyst, Ben Rabidoux. He's going to be on our podcast next week. But he has developed a brilliant chart that really gives you a key insight into, is the population really growing or not? Well, let's separate the bullshit from the facts, okay? And this chart shows negative. It's a brilliant chart. Cell phone activations, new cell phone activations. But, you say, well, wait a minute, Ron. What about people who are switching? No, this chart is smart. It nets out the switchers. This is net new. So at one point in 2023 and 2024, it's going through the roof. It was skyrocketing. Because let's face it, I don't care who you are. I don't care where you're from. You're from the poorest country in Africa, the poorest parts of South Asia. You get a goddamn cell phone. Like, cell phone is like life, okay? Life for everybody. Like, almost everybody in Africa has a cell phone. They almost run their economies in some countries on cell phones. There's no banking. There's hardly much of a banking system. There's hardly much of a payment system. Nobody has credit cards, but you can use your phone to pay for stuff in Africa. So cell phone is like universal, okay? Universal. So activations during that big run-up when the federal government lost their fucking mind and had 1.2 million people coming in every year, 1.3 million people coming in every year for several years, those cell phone activations were going through the roof, okay? Not now. Now they're basically net negative, tiny bit net negative. And that's meaningful to me. I believe these kind of truthful, on the ground indicators. Give you a couple of other indicators. These students are leaving because these dirty, rotten bastard community colleges who ripped everybody off and abused the system, lied to the students mainly coming from Asia, South Asia. They're laying off teachers. They're stripped to the bone. I hope some of the dirty bastards who ran them go broke. Like, I'm hoping. I doubt it very much, because normally these guys steal all the money and put it away somewhere. So yeah, that tells me, okay, that's a good indicator. Like, if those community colleges are laying off in droves, that tells me something. That tells me, yes, indeed, the foreign student cohorts that were so terribly abused are not coming in and likely going home. Okay. And yes, I know there's a huge increase in refugee requests, off the charts big, but it'll get worked through, and hopefully the new federal government will take some steps to make sure it gets worked through quickly. Other things that tell me population growth is radically slowed or going negative. Rents keep falling, like in big cities, Vancouver, Toronto, certain degree, almost starting in Calgary too, and just starting in Montreal, rents are falling. They've been falling in Toronto for well over a year, like maybe 16 months, but they keep falling every month. Every month, There's new offers from landlords to say, hey, 3 months free, 2 months free, 1 month free. Hey, come on. Free parking space, free this, free that, free Netflix, free. One of them's even offering, I mean, it just goes on and on. So that tells me that's real world stuff about, it's bad. The landlords are having some troubles, okay? And that means there's less people. It's just so simple. Finally, one of the big indicators to me is in certain housing markets where these poor students who were abused by the community colleges, where they lived, because they came from South Asia, from certain parts of South Asia, and they were supported by people in their community, and also taken advantage of, in some cases, by people in their community. In Brampton and Surrey, some of these big houses that had like 16 futons in them, like 16 people crammed into these houses being students, and sometimes actually temporary foreign workers, those houses are emptying out. Some of them are going into power sale. Some of them are, some of them are trying to sell for like a lot less because that tremendous cash cow of these students is now gone. So all these things tell me in the real world that there's a massive shift from stupid, mistaken, idiotic, every government to blame, both provincial and federal to blame, crazy growth, where I think we brought in 3 million people in 2.5 years, is telling me it's reversing, and that's a fact. What's it mean? If you have reversing population growth, that ain't good for real estate, particularly not good for rents, okay? And I'll give you one more very fascinating insight into how all this immigration works. Most Canadians do not know this, but the province of Quebec controls their own immigration. That's the only province that does. It's the only province that has its own total say over how many people come in every year. And now there's a restriction on that. They have to, if refugees show up at their borders and claim refugee status, they have to let them in. That's why they were so mad about that road they closed from New York to Quebec, and they were Roxton Road. They were mad about it because there's all people pouring in, so they had to take them. But now it looks like that's stopped. But here's what Quebec's doing. Quebec was only allowing in 50,000 new Canadians a year. That's it. Everybody. Sometimes Ontario took in 500,000. Sometimes BC took in 225,000, 185,000. Quebec, Alberta took in a ton. Quebec limit of 50,000 plus refugees. They're in the process of now lowering that to 25,000. So if you ever wonder why Quebec has substantially lower house prices than other big provinces like Ontario, British Columbia, Alberta, and they have lower rents in Quebec, if you ever wonder, I think that's one of the answers. Not the only answer, but I think that's one of the answers. Highly restrictive population growth.